I'm Caity Massoud, and this is Flute Unscripted, candid conversations with musicians, makers, and masters. I sit down with a new artist every week and share their uncensored stories with you. You're listening to Season 1, brought to you by Flute Center of New York, the exclusive marketplace for flutes. Join us and subscribe, and please stay tuned to the end of the episode for a special Flute Center of New York code for our podcast listeners. International soloist and chamber musician Stefan Hoskuldsson was most recently appointed as Principal Flute of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra in 2015. We here in New York got to know him best for his stellar performances as Principal Flute with the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra from 2008 to 2015. He got his start in Iceland, studied in England, and thereafter started working at the Flute Center of New York, where he was able to network and build an orchestral career. A flutist's flutist, Stefan has a characteristically beautiful sound and has established himself as a revered soloist and in-demand teacher. All right, we're joined today by Stefan Hoskuldsson and my guest, Julian Rose, also speaking with us. Thank you so much for talking.
Thank you.
To start off kind of at your youth and the start of your flute playing, you talk a little bit about your father and how he's been really influential in your growth as a musician. Mm-hmm. Did he introduce you to music?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I grew up in a very musical household. He played the piano and the accordion, and he was also the organist in the church. He owned a furniture business. That was kind of his main job, but he was a musician on the side, and always played music at home. And we had a very eclectic collection of records. From anything from Maria Callas to Martha Argerich, and a really extremely musical upbringing.
How about jazz?
And jazz,
yeah.
Yes, to a lot of jazz and improvising. Mm-hmm. My father actually played in a jazz band in the 50s, and they were he was a great improviser, and I was always so fascinated by that as a child. He could just sit down and play and improvise. And
do you dabble with improvisation yourself?
I have, yes. Yeah. And
what are your feelings on it?
I think it's an essential tool for every single musician to improvise. I think it's it brings you closer to your instrument. It brings you in touch with your musical core. It even, I think it creates this, I don't know how to say it. It brings about your inner creativity. It brings it out.
I actually remember I took a lesson with you once here in New York, and I played Mozart for you, and I think one of my big takeaways was you told me to improvise in the style of Mozart a little bit more before playing, just to get in the style of it, and that was really helpful for me. So I get what you're talking about. It's not so much jazz in terms of the harmonies and the functions. It's just making music and being free and being in the style of something. And
I mean, jazz is a category in itself, and there's harmonic, all the harmonies and all the tunes and everything that you learn as a jazz musician that I'm not fluent in. But you see, we can get closer to music by improvising on it. Like one of the biggest lesson I had was like to really do that and to practice like that, to practice in the style of Prokofiev, or practice in the style of Schubert, or practice in the style of, just to kind of enter the world, or the kind of feeling of the composer.
Sure. Mr. Hoskuldsson draws from his musical background and his own research to develop his teaching style. Stefan is also greatly influenced by his teachers. He attended the Reykjavik School of Music in Iceland, where he studied with Bernard Wilkinson. Following his graduation, Stefan attended the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester, England, where he studied with Peter Lloyd.
I studied with Bernard from my age of 9 until 20, for 11 years. Mm-hmm. So, and then I went to Manchester to study with Peter Lloyd at the Royal Northern College.
How did his teaching influence your playing?
Greatly. He was a very, very refined musician, refined flute player of the sort of finest French tradition. And he, basically opened up a different kind of world, a much lighter, easeful way of playing, much more fluid, very, especially with articulation. He really changed my way of articulating.
Does he have specific vowels that he...
Yeah, a lot more forward, a lot more open. And, he really believed in the, the kind of vocal quality and, keeping an open, what do you call it?
Oral cavity.
Yeah, here in the face. So that was a big thing. I just played, we played etudes and scales for 1 year basically.
That sounds
But he was
fun.
great. He never played in lessons, Peter. He had stopped playing, actually. He was had bad asthma, so he had to stop playing. He never demonstrated anything. It was very funny.
Wow.
I never ever heard him play in my lessons. He just explained things.
Do you think that's kind of influenced how you teach? Do you think that it's as important to play for your students and give them an example, or do you want them to find it on their own?
I think it's a delicate balance. I think that it's very important to not play for, a bit. To explain things, to really explain things and have people listen to themselves and how things can change when you change certain things. You change something, you open up, you use their support, and you have to hear it, because students have to have the experience of the change. Otherwise, just from hearing me play it, it's, they think, oh, you're principal of the Chicago Symphony, or you're so great, or whatever. No, it's just it's skills. It's about doing something correctly, doing something, playing the flute in a way that is correct and that makes sense, and that makes, it's like cooking, you have to learn.
There's a recipe and there's all the ingredients.
Yes, and you have to learn the balance of balancing flavors, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to want to eat something that's, too spicy, too salty, that's basically what it is.
So, talking about teaching and launching from your studies to now your beginning a career in teaching, recently appointed to professor at DePaul University, I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether you feel this part of your career is a new part of your career, or if it's an extension of the last 20 years of performing with various orchestras. How do you feel teaching fits into what your life has been so far?
I think it's just like a hugely important part of my life now. A very, very, let's say, exciting part of my life, because I feel like, I've had a lot of experiences. I've had a lot of I've thought a lot about what I'm doing. I've practiced an awful lot. I've played at the Met. I've played many auditions, and I feel like I have now I think my ideas are starting to crystallize, and like all the stuff that I learned is starting to crystallize, and I feel like now I really feel very strongly about teaching, and it's a very, very natural a natural progression of what I have been doing over the last.
So after, to backtrack a little, after England, so then you come to New York.
Mm-hmm.
You start playing here, introducing yourself to flutists in the city,
Mm-hmm.
kind of getting used to the dynamic here, and
Mm-hmm.
you come to the Flute Center. Can you talk a little bit about your role at the Flute Center of New York?
Yeah, I heard about the Flute Center of New York. I heard about Phil Unger because I had to have work done on my flute. So I found the Flute Center, which was located across the street from the Lincoln Center. And I walked in and I met Phil, who was the most warm, open, friendly person I had met in New York or and he basically introduced himself, and he fixed my instrument, and he had also had an eclectic collection of flutes. He had a Louis Lott flute on his table, and I was like, wait a minute, is that a real Louis Lott? And he said, yes, this is. And I picked it up and I played it, and wow, this is an incredible instrument.
Had you had a lot of experience with those vintage flutes prior?
I had, yeah. My teachers played on them. So Peter Lloyd, Wissam, they all played on old flutes. I mean, they had been retuned and somewhat changed, but I was always inspired by that sound and how they got these colors. And Wissam actually was kind of he played for me a lot in lessons, and that was also good because he got that incredible, warm, rich, magic sound that was just so inspiring to hear. The pianissimos he could play were out of this world, and I couldn't get it on my flute for some reason. I couldn't find that kind of sound that filled the room but was so soft and luminous. So I picked up that flute and I found that sound, and I started playing it, and I bought it from Phil. That's how our friendship started.
And did you play on that Louis Lott still in public performances?
I did. I played on it, and I played on it. It was actually in original condition. It was 1886, built in 1886. So it was not retuned. It had not been changed. So I played on it. It was very different. It was kind of hard because it's different scale, different embouchure, very small embouchure, the sound was so beautiful, but it was small, you know what I mean? So I learned a lot from playing it about colors and about how you have to relax your face and your body when you play. I mean, that instrument had a big, it was like a teacher for me almost.
In a goal-oriented industry where some musicians push their way to the top only to be faced with mounting pressure and expectations, Stefan has mastered effortless ease with his outlook on flute playing. After reaching success at the Met and in Chicago, Mr. Hoskuldsson continues to live in the present and handles a growing career by letting go of expectations. You're playing with the Met and you make the leap up, winning the audition for Principal. What is that transition like for you? That's not as common of a transition for lots of flutists if you have a second flute position to move up to Principal. Did you notice a shift in your own dynamic within the section, within the orchestra? Did you feel like you had to change your playing at all? Or did you feel like you were just you and it was a natural progression?
Well, first of all, I never really anticipated that I would become the next principal. You know, that was a
Why
very
is that? I'm curious.
well, you know, you never know in this life. You see, I of course always loved playing principal flute. I love to be expressive and be in that chair where I'm, you know, being heard and stuff like that. But I was extremely happy also being second flute.
Do you have that attitude about auditioning too, where
Yes.
you go to an audition and you're going to play your best and you have no expectations? Do you think expectations kind of can hinder us?
Expectation will kill your route. It'll just put an end to it. Expectation is the worst thing. People cannot expect anything. You can only be in the moment, in the present moment. And that was a big discovery for me. I was very fortunate also around the time in 2003, 2004 here in New York to come across a person that helped me. She was a hatha yoga teacher, and she was a great friend of mine. And she brought me to understand more about life and philosophy, and especially yogic philosophy.
Mm-hmm. I'm a yoga teacher too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I understand.
It's
very influential in flute playing.
It's great, and it was the greatest thing for me because I started to understand, you know, that, and she walked me through a kind of a visualization process before the audition. To have, first of all, to wish people well, to be a well-wisher, to be, visualize all the people in the world, all the flutists in the world that are so successful and so great and so have reached such a high standard, and wish them well, have good feelings to them, and be happy for them. And also, second, to be grateful for what you have already. A roof over our heads, you know, food to eat, nice clothes, you know, great society, friends, family, you know, and these things kind of they really helped me focus, because before that I had really had this ambition, like crazy ambition to like become this soloist, and like, you know, and I wasn't getting where I wanted to be. I went to many competitions, and I didn't get past the first round. I went to this and that and this and that, and I always got, you know, because I showed up with this, you know, here I am, you know, and I'm gonna get this, you know, but that's not how it works. That's not how it works. And this philosophy really helped me, and lo and behold, I won the job.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you frame it that way, because I met you 5 years ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
I've always considered you among the most humble people I've ever met. Never, you know, a sense of ego, though I think you have very good reason to have an ego. Your level of playing is incredible. But I'd love to hear you talk about that humility, and particularly as it pertains to the solo career that's developing now. Do you feel like you're on the precipice of a larger solo career? Are things moving in a direction for you since the CD release, since winning Chicago? Are you busier in the solo context now?
Well, I'm getting, of course, you know, since I have progressed and gotten where I am right now, the natural progression is that people are noticing me, and organizations such as the National Flute Association, and you know, the flute world has, you know, noticed, and I'm getting more and more things to do, and I don't know if I'm gonna have a solo career per se, just as a self-sustaining solo career. I don't know.
I love that what we just talked about, you're tying back into this lack of expectation that you have. You know, I think it just shows how beautiful it is that that you can achieve this level of success and still have no expectation.
Yeah, no, I just have learned that I can't take anything for granted. You see, I'm very happy where I am right now. I'm in this moment. You see, I just cannot anticipate what the future will hold. I know that, people have taken interest in what I have to offer and, want to hear me play, and I'm extremely grateful for that. And you say if that's gonna continue and snowball, I'll be very happy. But, in the meantime, I just want to get better at what I do. I just want to reach I want to go deeper into what I do. I want to, understand more and explain more and help people. That's really what I want to do. And help people achieve this, understanding that I'm starting to understand.
There are obviously a lot of people holding principal chairs from outside of the U.S. that never decide to take the leap to become an American citizen. Was there a particular reason that you decided to take that jump as opposed to just, staying a citizen of Iceland?
Well, as I said, I am very honored to be an American citizen. I think it's like I have considered myself half American, half Icelandic. I mean, it's not a part of my identity, so to speak. I don't think about myself as being particularly American or Icelandic. This is all...
Do you think that type of categorizing for flute playing is kind of a moot point, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays. I mean, we used to do that. We said, the great French flutist, the great American flutist, not so much
now
anymore.
It's just globalization. Yeah. Now it's global. I'm a global flutist.
There you go.
So after your release of your first CD, Solitude, you were performing that repertoire often. What was your practice regimen like leading up to the recording and release of the CD? And do you feel more connected to those works now, or do you think you need some distance from them after spending so much intensive time on them?
I love the works that I recorded. I spent a lot of time practicing them. The practice regimen before the recording was very, very different. I felt like I had to really go deep into the pieces, understand them. I mean, that should be the case in any case. I mean, but you see, when you do a recording, you are creating something that will be there forever. It's gonna go out there and it's gonna remain there, and that's kind of scary.
Sure.
And I almost didn't realize it until after I had made the recording. But I felt like I really, as you said, I feel like I understand these pieces more and more. I feel like listening to the recording, there are so many things I do differently. There are so many things I would do differently. It's not that I don't like it. I like it, but you see, I understand the pieces so much better now.
You're continuing to develop your opinions and thoughts on the pieces.
And I would want to record them again and do them completely differently. So, but that's just the way it is. It's the way with art. We live in an artistic world. We constantly changing. We're constantly evolving. We ideas are always developing.
That's one of the beauties of recorded music versus live performances is, you take your recording and that's your take and, all of your ideas are kind of codified into that one recording. Mm-hmm. But then you can perform the same piece 10 times and play it 10 different ways.
Yeah, that's it. And I recorded that CD in 2013 and that's just who I was in 2013. That's just who I was. I'm very different now. Very, very different. And I can hear it in my playing. I hear it. It's like, but it's amazing, I can't be frustrated at that. But sometimes it's frustrating. Why couldn't I have done it differently? This thing is out there for the whole world, for the rest of eternity.
Then it's time for another CD.
And you just do another CD.
Are you in the works for recording anything new? Foreseeable future?
I haven't made any plans, but I do. It's definitely on the horizon. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much again for taking the time and talking with us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
You can hear the 2013 version of Stefan on his album Solitude, And you can listen to the 2018 version at any Chicago Symphony Orchestra performance. We eagerly await the recording and release of a future album where Mr. Hoskuldsson says he is undecided on repertoire but is interested in newly commissioned works. Composers, get to work on writing something fantastic. Thank you, Stefan Hoskuldsson. This episode's music featured Schubert's Introduction and Variations. This has been an episode of Flute Unscripted. This podcast is sponsored by the Flute Center of New York. Visit their website at flutesforsale.com for the largest selection of new and pre-owned instruments. Use this season's promo code LISTEN for a special deal of $50 off any purchase of $4.99 or more. You can follow the Flute Center on Instagram and like them on Facebook to stay up to date on the latest events and masterclasses. Special thanks to our owner Phil Unger, the Flute Center team, and Stefan Hoskuldsson for our theme music.